Okay, so I wasn't sure if this would be the best slot of the day or the worst slot of the day. So the best time is that everybody has a seat. So that's good. And I really thank Cam for the kind introduction and thank the Space Frontier Foundation for inviting me to return to NewSpace conference as a speaker. I've spoken here multiple times in various aspects of my past lives, and last year I returned to NewSpace in my role with Ball Aerospace. So last year kind of maybe gave a little preview of this talk, and I talked about new space capturing the attention of old space and how our stereotypical view of the two tends to be completely opposite. You have old versus new, slow versus fast, stagnant versus agile. When the questions we just had here implied real space, which would imply the other is fake space, big and small, diligent, efficient, and so on. And I would argue that there's actually really very few differences, and it's really about working together. There's no old or no new, it's both. And perhaps this morning we heard a couple of times, and I'll give a shout out to Chuck Beams about next space, because it is always about what's next. So I kind of like that. I'm going to play around with that a little bit. But it's about old and new and everything in between. And we need both working together to advance the future of space. So to prepare for today, I asked some of my team at Ball about their thoughts on new and old space. And we had some fascinating comparisons, and some of them were really funny. So one was, well, new is startups, and old is, well, more established, like, Boeing. We assessed, interesting, Star Wars, the old Star Wars versus the new Star Wars. We just heard a lot about that. And while Star Wars is futuristic, it's really about the past. So I asked my guy, well, why was it old? He said, well, I don't know, it just looked old. And the new Star Wars just looks fresh and more modern. And besides, Yoda is kind of creepy. But okay, well, that was interesting. So another said, well, what's old space? I totally had to laugh because she said, well, are we talking about real estate? Like, oh my gosh, no. So you could tell we were having a lot of fun in the office. So we talked about traditional space opportunities and all the new players that are both traditional space entrepreneurs who are who are getting access now to what was the purview of traditional space. So we said, well, what about a new space company or an old space company going after an old space concept? What is that? So then she said, well, maybe it's mid-space. But we decided that's a really boring name for a conference, so mid-space wasn't going to do it either. So it kind of all boiled down to the fact that new space just sounds fresh, inclusive, modern, futuristic, and very accessible, and inclusive to the general public. So this reminded me of how the term new space as we know it today and how the Space Frontier Foundation is using it as two words merged together with capital letters. So that actually was a brand refresh by the Space Frontier Foundation, because the term new space, lower letters, two words, really was in the 90s, and it was at the dawn of commercial space activities for telecommunication, satellite constellations, and the reusable launch vehicle market. So after that market ebbed and flowed, and it was kind of 2004-ish or so, I said, well, how is this fresh? What is new space now? Because new space was already then, and now it's going to be new again. So the whole story is on the Space Frontier Foundation website, but it just reminded me of making what was old, new, and fresh. And that, I think, is what, when we talk about old space, new space, it really is all about reinvention and refresh. So the late 1990s is actually a good place to start my talk. I've been on both sides, the startups and established companies. I've worked government and commercial programs with large and small teams, and I've noticed while they're different, they're not so dissimilar either. I went into aerospace because I wanted to do things that had never been done before, and this has been my guiding principle ever since, in really deliberately choosing and following my career path to enable those. So it's appropriate while we're in Washington State, and you guys have probably figured out, in many ways, it's the Kistler Aerospace Alumni Show. As we started out the morning with Rob Meyerson, Jason Andrews, and there's several others here in the audience today, because we were based in Kirkland, along with Teledesic, and Carolina Point, which is just on the east side of Lake Washington. And this was the heyday of the post-Cold War era, when we were looking at how to do things differently in space, how to make our enemy our friend. That's a whole other story to go to, of making what's old new again. We're there again. We're there again today. So at Kistler, we raised over $600 million in private capital. We spent over $800 million, that's another part, to really what was going to be the very first privately funded reusable launch vehicle, the K-1. And it was very much NewSpace and Old Space partnering together. We, at Kistler, we were the integrator, we were like the prime contractor, and our team was all the existing companies, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Aerojet, Honeywell, just to name a few, and taking a new systems approach to hardware and to integrate some things that already existed and were now available because of the end of the Cold War, and linking that together in a reversed relationship to do something new and create a new business concept in space with commercial access and the ability to go to and from space. The satellite telecommunication market fell apart, and we had to do something different. So Kistler did a brand refresh as well and said, well, we have a vehicle that can go up and down and do things in between. So maybe with that reusability, we could have a new market area. And that is what led to what is today the commercial International Space Station resupply for cargo and eventually crew. Perhaps one of the most important things that was produced out of that era was the cadre of people, the alumni team, if you will, who continue to contribute to new and old space alike, and they're in companies everywhere, still here in Seattle and around the area. So after Kistler, I became president of Air Launch. We moved across the street, same view, a little lower, cheaper, and there's more alumni here from that era. Gary and Ann Hudson are over here, and you guys all know Jim Muncie. And this time we shifted the thinking a little bit. We said, well, that commercial funding, I don't know, that was kind of difficult. Let's go to the government, and the government will fund a commercial concept because they'll be a much more reliable customer. So Department of Defense provided the funding, and we were developing a liquid rocket to launch out of the inside of a C-17 cargo airplane. So this program really challenged the very core of traditional and entrepreneurial ways of approaching space. The Air Force and DARPA were partners. And as you can imagine, these are two totally different doctrines to problem solving, two totally different philosophies about systems engineering, not to mention the politics and the emotions that go along with putting a liquid rocket into a cargo airplane, flying it around, and bringing it back safely. It was really challenging, and the best thing out of that, I think we created a mindset of operationally responsive space, how you could access space where you want it, when you want it, new concepts of operations, new architectures that are enabled for national security space, and today you see a lot of the air launch concepts are almost there, and I'm really excited to see those succeed. So that brought me into academia at Stevens Institute of Technology, where I did some research. It was actually inspired by what made air launch fail. And one of the failures was this different approach between systems engineering. What is something that a traditional approach is, and what is something that is an entrepreneurial approach? And we looked at, well, what was it about? Was it about the product or the idea you were building? Was it about the process? Could you do systems engineering faster? Was it about the business model? No, in the end, it was all about the people. It always came down to the people and what you could do differently, the mindset that you were in, positive or negative, good mood, bad mood, what you believed in, your core values, and pulling together the cultural and philosophical differences and trying to find the more commonalities and how we could do something different. So now I'm at Ball. It's an established mid-sized company headquartered in Colorado. In fact, this year we celebrate 60 years. And I'm as Cam said, the Vice President General Manager of Strategic Operations, which gives me a big picture view over the entire company. And some of you may know Ball, some of you may not know Ball. It really here is bringing together all the aspects of my own entrepreneurial background and bridging that new, old, mid-space and doing what's next. So maybe rather than me introducing you to Ball, I do want to show you the Ball you may know, the Ball you may not know. And like the Space Frontier Foundation and the brand refresh that was done, we just did a brand refresh at Ball in April to tell our story about how we go beyond and what's making old new again, and so on. So with that, I'll just show you a little video.
Farthest reaches of space to the most challenging places on Earth. From accurate weather forecasts to precise intelligence, from insightful observations of our planet and our atmosphere to real-time situational awareness. From ensuring those who protect our freedom can go forward bravely and return home safely, to providing a deeper understanding of our universe. From the transparent and collaborative spirit of our team, to the innovative reach of our customers' missions, and solid partnerships that span decades. From the Big Bang to big data, from making space more affordable to turning information into actionable intelligence, to making our nation more secure. Ball Aerospace pioneers discoveries that enable our customers to perform beyond expectation, protect what matters most, and always help you go beyond.
So hopefully you can feel some of the excitement that we have at Ball and what we're doing and how we bring new and old together every day. And which kind of brings us back to, well, what is this concept of new space? And I hesitate to keep using these terms because someone say, well, it's so overused. Old just sounds like you're old-fashioned or you're out of touch or you wear reading glasses. And the truth is it does continue to evolve and mature and build on accomplishments and setbacks. And I think a lot of the competitiveness that we often see of this us versus them is actually a little destructive. We're trying to, in many cases, you think, well, somebody has to defend or stake out their business territory where they're trying to disrupt the others. But really, our relationship is very synergistic. And I think in the end, it is all about the people and being passionate about going to space, why we go there, how we get there, what we do there, what we discover when we're there, and making a difference for our lives here on Earth and in pioneering discoveries to make a difference for beyond our planet and the solar system as well. So to get to the same end goal, I really want to talk about three things, which is innovation, partnerships, and people. And I'm going to use those as the similarities for bridging these two views of space. So one is innovation. Well, what is innovation? Where is it? Who does it? And how do we use it? So it's more than a new idea. We often talk about innovation as in the idea or in the thing. Well, it's really, I think, how it's applied, how it's used, and maybe to an existing problem or a problem you didn't even know existed, and how it's adapted, and sustained. That thing could be a better technology, it could be a better product, a better service, maybe a better business model, or a different model, or it could even just be a changed mindset in how you use something. And by the way, the thing doesn't even have to be new. It can be readily available, and it's just used in a different way. So I think you can see where I'm going here, is that new space equals innovation, innovation equals new space. So now about the innovator. Well, who are the innovators? Are the innovators new space? Is it old space? Well, it can be anyone. It can be and is you. It's us. Entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, anyone who has an idea with the passion and persistence, key, to see it through, to create a new result, making it happen. A lot of talk in the last panel about creating opportunities, making opportunities versus waiting for them to happen. So what about age? That came up too. Are innovators old or new, or old or young? And I would say yes. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but with Kistler, going back to that story, which was founded by and led by the Apollo greats and some of the early pioneers from the space shuttle program, they were in their 70s when this was founded. So you can do a startup at any age. And they had, it was funny, they wanted to, George Miller, who passed away last October, was a mentor to many of us in the room. They wanted to solve a grudge that they had against Congress for redesigning the space shuttle way back then. Like, we can do it better, we can do it different. Today's our day, now is our time. So it really doesn't matter when or where, at what time of your life you do innovation. So where can you find innovation? Is it about a location? DoD, Department of Defense, right now thinks it has to go to Silicon Valley to buy innovation. Those of you in Seattle, or in Boulder, or in Boston, or Washington, D.C. I think innovation is everywhere, and the NewSpace is everywhere. It's not just in one location. So looking at innovation also in a new way, you saw the picture of Pluto in here. So this comes to whether innovation is actually something new or something old. Ball built the Ralph camera that took the pictures that you're seeing, one of the primary instruments on the New Horizons spacecraft, which traveled for over 10 years. That instrument was designed and built over probably 15 years ago. Very lightweight for its time. It was under 25 pounds, so an advance in size, in mass, in power. And so it's kind of old. And yet it's bringing us new images that are very fresh and modern. So what we thought of Pluto, which by this time, it's not even a planet anymore, was a little white dot in the midst of a whole lot of other white dots. And now we see new pictures of Pluto that show it has a heart, it has ridges, peaks, and valleys. And it's really showing us a new way of looking at something that was developed kind of in a new for its time and is older. In fact, that technology has already been reapplied with another instrument that is flying today on the WorldView 3 spacecraft that we built for Digital Globe, and that was delivering images off that spacecraft before we ever knew what Pluto looked like. So the innovation begins again as we go through data, as we collect things from space and learn about it. So that adds another part of my dimension of the innovation definition, which is the journey of discovery. Then I think there's a repetition as well. What's old becomes new, what's new becomes old, and then it becomes new again. We've heard it today with rockets and how launch vehicles are developing, telecommunications and remote sensing businesses. We're seeing a lot of newness from the things that we've collected over time and pulling that together. By the way, that picture of Pluto can be yours in the silent auction out there. It's an awesome picture. So my second part of the similarities is partnerships and collaboration. So partner with an industry and industry working together. I've seen it firsthand. You heard my example from Kistler. Why did we do that? Why did a startup team with existing traditional companies? Well, we needed access to their technologies, their tooling, their models, their engineers, their facilities, the infrastructure, the experts. We needed people who knew what didn't work before and what might be able to be looked at in a new way. We also needed credibility. It brought credibility to our customers. It brought credibility to the investor community to say, well, if the big guys are doing it with you, it must mean it's a good idea. And we don't understand anything about rocket science. So we're going to trust that you, the people, can do it. And then we'll go figure out, we, the investor side and the business side, will go figure out how to make a business out of it. We needed each other to make it work. The startup in this case brought the new idea, the new market application, the willingness to try a new business model. And I think we see that today over and over again in this current view of NewSpace. Ball, in fact, was a startup itself. We started in 1880 by five Ball brothers, who borrowed money from an uncle to purchase the wooden jacket can company. So I guess it was kind of an M&A story as well. And they made wood-jacketed tin cans to hold paint and kerosene. So that soon expanded into glass And we don't, the glass jars say Ball, that's Ball. That really is us, and it's a very well-known brand. We don't make the glass anymore. We sold that. We license our brand. So we can continue that innovation in a new way, and it's a great example of what's old is new again, because it's very trendy right now to go to a restaurant and, buy the Ball jars and use them for drinking glasses or for wedding decorations, centerpieces. So again, what's old is new and gets reinvented. We have continually reinvented on the packaging side, going into beverage cans, and if you didn't know this factoid already, I think we do over 65 billion beverage cans a year. And you can check for the Ball brand, that same little brand, buy a UPC symbol and pick up a Coke or any beverage, and you can check it out. So Ball Aerospace was founded through a partnership, another M&A activity from the son of one of the Ball founders, who was out looking for something new to do. I'm really shortening the story. And he partnered with faculty and students from the University of Colorado Boulder, who are working in the very early days of the space program, showing another aspect of industry partnering with university, which created a company today known as Ball Aerospace. So then there's another part of teaming with from the other perspective of startups with startups themselves. We're now seeing a lot of entrepreneurs working with other entrepreneurs, and that is another aspect of the maturity, I think, through the relationships that we have in our communities and how we can pull together innovation in new ways. And by the way, some of this thinking, you can have the best idea in the world, but if people don't want it or don't know how to use it, or you don't get any money, it probably won't work. This morning, a couple of examples in the panel of Seattle, talked about different ways of having partnerships. That can be a prime contractor, a subcontractor, a funder, an innovator, researcher, principal investigator. Actually, I think Chuck is who talked about that. And this is a place that we see every day at Ball about how we team. We help create digital globes, starting with Earthwatch, which ultimately became Digital Globe. Looking at James Webb Space Telescope, we learned from the challenges with Hubble, which Ball helped create the corrective optics, and all the 7 instruments on there, the images you see come from Ball. So based on that, how do you do a telescope that is larger than anything we've ever launched before? It's going to go farther, and you can't service it this time. So what do you do? How do you create the innovation that goes into the mirrors that we did that all have actuators on them? 18 mirrors. Each one of them can be individually controlled, so you can get your perfect optics whenever you need it. Teaming with small sats, and again with universities again, a CubeSat for Europa that we're working with JPL and Arizona State University. Transitioning from universities into production, into the applied side. A great example, an ion velocity meter that we're working with the University of Texas that transferred over to Ball to make it, to produce it, execute it, and make it real, if you will. Tempo, it's a pollution monitoring spectrometer that we're doing for a NASA mission. It's going to have a new way of partnering with the government. So it's a NASA mission. It's going to fly as an Air Force hosted payload on a GEO mission. Omni-Earth, Laser Light, some other startups you may have heard about, where we're bringing demonstrated technology and capability to the startup ideas. A great example I love to talk about is the semi-autonomous motor project. You can look it up on YouTube. There's some fabulous videos of Sam and Sam Schmidt, who's a quadriplegic former race car driver who was injured. And he drove again in the Indy 500 last year through the technology by applying systems engineering, remote sensing, human-machine interface, got in a car and a Corvette outfitted for him, and did it all with his head and his jaw. It's incredible. And that's a huge part of innovation and teaming together. And then finally, Wavefront Technologies, a cyber startup that we just bought in Maryland, which is highly regarded in its customer community, and using a small business to help us grow and help them grow as well. There's another part of partnering about the government. So quite often in NewSpace, we talk about doing something outside of the government and doing it in a very commercial way, and how can we avoid it and get around that system, which is very frustrating. And yet, the government plays a critical role in linking our communities. Like it or not, we have policies, laws, regulations, you heard about them before, treaties, licensing, taxes, infrastructure, funding, and more. So since the 1980s, we actually have a U.S. national space policy. It's evolved over time that calls for the government to use commercial systems wherever possible. This is actually a core part of our government space system. It is built into our policy. Now, do we use it all the time? Not exactly. You have to know how to, and first of all, know it's there, know how to use it, know how to apply it. So today you see that happen again with remote sensing markets and new ways of applying to agriculture and oil and gas, oceanography, geology. Think of all that talk from Autodesk about what you can do with new technologies coming together. With worldview images, a British archaeologist recently discovered new evidence by using space to detect below the ground that the Vikings apparently explored America. So working within our current government system is also really important. Around it, in it, changing that mindset because it is there. And maybe that's a good place where I can honor Patty Grace Smith, who many of you know and worked with, who passed away recently. A fabulous tribute to her is in Space News from Jim Muncie. Really somebody from the government side who is bridging new and traditional and finding ways to make it work, and was truly a pathfinder in her own right through her entire career. So finally, looking at the most important ingredient, which is the people. It's all of us. It's what we do. The diversity, the mix of personalities, cultures, backgrounds, experiences, perspectives to spur innovation and enable these things to happen. I love coming here with NewSpace and seeing new faces, new energy, and it's renewed energy as well for those of us who've been in the industry a while and those who are just coming into it new. So we just look at the room and the kind of diversity we have and what we need to do. And especially, I mean, all the women who are running this show, very particularly. Team composition is also really important. Who's the driver, the visionary, the doer, the naysayer, the one who helps prevent you from jumping off too high a bridge? That's a good role as well, because it is rocket science in the end. And if you have too many of one kind, you're going to get stuck. So having that diversity is really important. So maybe to close, I say, old space and new space, it's about the ideas that drive the people, the innovation and the partnerships. All of us are really working to make a difference, to pioneer discoveries, explore a universe, have a sustainable planet, improve our quality of life. So is it new? Is it old? Is it mid? Is it next? I think it's always about what's next. And I actually really like that. I like the inclusiveness of it, how it brings everything together, old, new, everything in between to make things happen and advance the future of space. So I'll just close with a quote, something else that is old, that's new again. Quoting from Tony Award-winning rap musical, Hamilton, which is a refreshed look at history, a totally new way of the founding fathers of the United States, and telling that story in a way that is relatable and makes it fresh and new. And I love this. Look around, how lucky we are to be alive right now. A timeless thought for all generations, our generations, the NewSpace generation. Thank you. So I know I got the hook because I got a little cut off